Welcome to the Jobs and Work podcast. If you're like most Americans, you spend a significant amount of your time working. In fact, we spend more time at our jobs than anywhere else. But how often do we really talk about work in America? On this podcast, the Work for Change team will. Work for Change, LLC is a team of social scientists, thought leaders, and digital storytellers who dig into the critical issues affecting American workers and workplaces today. Our podcast is co-hosted by Dr. Kendra Jason and myself, Dr. Kris Maycumber. We'll also bring guests onto the show who reflect the diversity of the American workforce. We are so excited for you to join us as we lead the efforts to humanize the workplace by building dignity and equity into jobs, work, and organizations. Please subscribe to the podcast and share us with your friends and family. You can learn more about Work for Change at workforchangellc.com. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Jobs and Work podcast. This is episode 4, and the theme for this week is Conversations with Kendra and Kris, and I am your co-host, Kris Maycumber.
And I am Kendra Jason, and today we want to acknowledge Black History Month. And in doing that, we're going to talk about Black women, Black men at work, Black families, but most likely we're going to, of course, open up the conversation to be broader than that one topic that we enter the door with. So I want to start by just saying, of course, Black history is really important, and we want to acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of African Americans, Black people to American society. It's also interesting that in my own personal work, I've taken a great interest in Black women and centering Black women, because Black women have been on the margins of conversations for so long when they have been so integral to the fabric of the working, our labor market, our homes, just society in general. And so I'm really excited about this conversation today because I get to talk to you. Kris and I get to share some stats, some facts, some figures, but really just have a nice, I think, hopefully casual conversation about Black women and men, and a more general conversation about what's going on in the labor market this week.
So part of what we're going to be doing with Conversations with Kendra and Kris is centering a lot of what's going on right now with COVID. You know, we hear there's some dominant stories about COVID, and we all know that the economy has taken a huge hit. But when we look at that through a lens with race and gender, we see that not everyone has been hit in the same way. So one of the things that Kendra and I would like to talk about is the way that the impact of COVID has disproportionately impacted women in general, but certainly women of color even more. So Kendra, I just wanted to start with that, like opening up, what are some ways for people who might just hear the sort of dominant narrative, which is the economy has been impacted by COVID. Part of what we do on this podcast is we complicate the dominant narrative. We say, okay, yes, or yes, but certain people have been impacted more than others. Yeah. So how would you want to unpack that for the audience?
Yeah, it's as you're introducing that, I'm trying not to go into a depression. In my profession, I'm a sociologist of work, and it's just a fact that, COVID has definitely had some negative impacts, and just for this conversation, I'm gonna try to narrow it to labor market participation and family dynamics, and not extend it out to the broader conversation about education and health and technology and everything. But, what COVID has basically done is not just exacerbated the inequalities that marginalized people face when it comes to getting jobs and securing jobs and providing for their families. One, I would say, latent effect is that it made those hardships visible to the general public. And so one way that you can think about this is first with the essential workers, right? And so I think that was the first major thing when we were sheltered in place as a nation. pretty much, you had this major push for acknowledgement of essential workers. And many people had never heard of that term or thought about, your grocery store workers and your healthcare workers and those child services and childcare workers who, do the hard work, who show up every day in mostly low wage jobs in order for us to get food, to get medicine, to get supplies, and to go about our daily business. And so, even though essential workers were essential or a foundation of our coping during that time, those low wage workers still faced hardships. In addition to having to come to work, many with health conditions, and exposing themselves to the general public, they also lost hours because companies were cutting back on hours because people were literally sheltered in place and they weren't getting the volume. So also you have people going to work, especially in this case, what's important is mothers going to work and their children are at home doing remote learning. And so there was a really great challenge for a lot of working mothers to be called into work as an essential worker, but yet not have support or childcare at home for their children. And so again, that is a situation that occurred across the board, across different races, but Black women are disproportionately represented in essential work. Literally, Black women represent about 1/3 of paid caregiving jobs. They are overrepresented in minimum wage jobs, so they're really overrepresented in essential work. And in addition to this, Black women spend about 24 hours per week on top of their jobs doing unpaid care. And so again, you have these situations where, yes, this is happening for all women across the board. All men and women have been affected by COVID-19, but it's a difference when, as a Black woman, statistically, 80% of Black women are the breadwinners in their household, right? And even if a Black woman is married, 50% of married Black women are the breadwinners in their household. So again, it's compounded by race and gender because Black women shoulder the economic burden in the Black family when it comes to income. And your income or your job is also your means to healthcare, right? And so if, Black women are also, because they're in low wage jobs, many Black women are overrepresented in low wage jobs. These low wage jobs have no or limited access to sick leave and paid time off. So again, compounded by race, gender, and class. And all of these things, accumulate to, really putting women in general, again, it's a broader conversation, but especially for Black women, it's a pressure cooker. Kris?
Right. And I was just gonna, just to also say, on top of all of the economic responsibilities, Black women are also expected to be primary caretakers of their children as well. So on top of that, they're also expected to be, leading with homeschooling. And, what we saw is that Black and Latina women are more likely to work in the jobs where you have high customer contact. So you don't have the choice to work remotely. So white women took a hit with jobs as well, but some of that was leaving, like opting out of the workforce because they're now working with the kids at home who are doing online learning. They had, or they were able to work remotely. So women of color are less likely to be working in the jobs where they can work from home, where they can work on a computer. So
Mm-hmm.
what we're seeing is this, the real strong connections between work and family life, which women have, all women, right, who have the expectations of family life and work can relate to the squeeze of having to be the primary breadwinner and the primary caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
you know so I think that's something that a lot of families can relate to. And in terms of remote working, there's that's not easy either. There has been a shift with that, with trying to homeschool children and work remotely, but having the luxury to be able to stay employed while you're at home holding it all together is certainly something that has been class-based, it has been race-based.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that productivity, like, how we would measure productivity has gone down more for women in terms of those like benchmarks in their careers, whether it's publications or research grants. We're seeing across the board, women have taken more of an impact, like more of a cut on those as their expectations and workload at home has increased. So something else that I thought would be interesting to talk about is how do we see workplaces recovering? How do we see workplaces like, integrating this, what has been called the shecession, which is, a way to acknowledge there is a strong gender pattern to the economic recession. So people may not have heard that term, but, a shecession is acknowledging that disproportionately this recession has impacted women. And then, of course, as we're saying, particularly women of color have been hit the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you're a workplace looking to rebound, what are some things that we would want to be mindful of? What are some things that employers and managers want to be thinking about moving forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now, we understand that management, if you're a profit-driven business, it is about cost reduction. It is about efficiency, and, as a capitalist-minded person, of course, a market-minded person, you understand how decisions are greatly influenced by market impacts. But what we really push workplaces and managers to do is to look beyond market demands and really think about how you can, again, humanize and dignify the experiences for your workers, which is actually, it's a dignifying process for management as well. And so to get to the heart of the question, I think one of the first things to do is just really be mindful that these gender patterns exist and to acknowledge your own gender bias when it comes to how you operate or how you make decisions in management. And so, for instance, this may be anecdotal, but, I just, heard from, I came across, a news article, a journalistic article, and one of the things that a woman was saying who has been negatively impacted by COVID-19 is that in her market, when managers have a decision to either bring a male or a female manager back, from being laid off or having decreased hours from COVID-19, they always bring the man back, right? And so, again, that's anecdotal in a sense. I don't have, a big statistical survey to back that up today at hand, but I really, as someone who understands gender patterns and how these things work, that makes complete sense. It makes complete sense that that's the pattern, not that that's the way it should be done. So women are not getting a fair shot at recovery. And so this is what Kris was, referring to. And so another thing to think about, and I haven't forgotten your question, Kris, but another thing to think about is as workplaces are thinking about recovery, is that the decisions that they make today are going to have very long-term impact for all of their workers. And so the fact that people have been displaced to the home, and this is not the situation where, you're a company that, your employees and your markets are working better because you have people working remotely. These are people who need to be in a workplace and who depend on income from having hours at their workplace, not at home. It's going to have some long economical and career development effects for them. And so just thinking about gender patterns and not leading with the mindset that, I should really bring a man back first because he's the breadwinner or because he's a leader in his home. You know, women have those same responsibilities. So I'm not saying for you to pick a man over a woman or a woman over a man, but I'm saying just be conscious of your gender bias when you're making those types of decisions. And then also be mindful of the different life circumstances that your male, female, non-binary people may have at work, especially when it comes to childcare responsibilities. And so you're going to have almost by default more women doing childcare work while they're working their full-time jobs or while they're working for you. And so, not to say men don't do that as well, but women are disproportionately doing it. So when it comes to sanctions, promotions, flexibility, you know, and any of those things that will either reward or sanction people based on their productivity and their presence at work, just again, keep in mind that women are disproportionately doing this childcare work. Men are doing it as well, but that needs to be considered as you're making these decisions, these executive level decisions about how to manage and treat your workers moving forward.
Thanks, Kendra. You know, my hope, and this might be the idealist in me, is that if there's like a work story that emerges from COVID, that sort of is a lingering story that ends up reshaping how we think about work and how we think about workers. I think, you know, what you had said is that we have to humanize people. Like, we can't just think of them as workers outside of what happens in the home, in the healthcare. And I think that's what COVID, I mean, it pressed all of us to think about the people we interact with in ways, and trying to be more accommodating, trying to acknowledge that the people who are working are also parents and students and have healthcare issues. They're taking care of elders, they're taking care of each other. There's the whole mental health piece here, how, you know, what we're seeing with young teenagers, the depression rates, the social isolation. Like, sometimes when you have this like this event that brings all generations together, right? Like, some generations have their event that kind of bounds their generation. And once in a while, something comes along that we're all in this, right? Young people, you know, older people, elderly people, and it's global. So we all have this, you know, which is tragic and, you know, has been heartbreaking in so many ways. But I think, you know, the resiliency piece is that there's opportunity to kind of put things back together better. And I'm hoping that part of the work that we do is helping guide workplaces through that, helping guide, you know, asking the questions that we're asking, like, how do we now recover, and how do we think about families, the needs of families? Because COVID will eventually be, you know, something that doesn't define our everyday life. But there are issues that do define people's lives. They have healthcare concerns. So, you know, my hope is that we can learn a lot from this and kind of build that into how we organize work and how we think of workers, more than just what they do when they're on, you know, at work.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the word opportunity, because one thing that I did want to acknowledge, of course, with Black women in particular, again, Black History Month, is that, you know, COVID has also opened up a lot of opportunity for people to explore their options. If they've been laid off, if they've been fired, or if, you know, just being at home is really pushing them to reconsider what they want to do with their life as, you know, as an individual, as a contributor to society. And so Black women in particular, over the last few years have been making great gains when it comes to education, especially getting advanced degrees, opening businesses. Black women are opening businesses at an exponential rate in comparison to some other groups. And so again, it's COVID-19 has introduced opportunity as well. Now, of course, there's a lot of privilege that goes into, being able to shift gears and taking risk. I mean, I think one of the greatest benefits of privilege is the ability to take risks, where if you're a low wage worker or you have health conditions or you have pressing family demands, the option to take a risk is not, something that you debate. And so I do want to acknowledge that there is a difference, but I don't want to leave out the positivity and the exploration and the growth that the effects of COVID-19 has provided for different people to start their own businesses, or to get additional training, or to take advantage of remote learning to, for advance, for job advancement. And I just wanted to acknowledge that really quickly.
Yeah, right. I mean, anytime there's a huge disruption to the sort of pattern of daily life, there's also the chance that people pivot, right? We can pivot and try to do something new and do something different. And, and when you're not as busy or not as traditionally, conventionally busy, anytime there's like a disruption to the flow, things can kind of shake around a little bit and shift around. And yeah, and I think it's exciting to think about the possibilities of change, right? Of what can happen and how we can do things better. So one of the other things that Kendra and I are offering, did you want to talk about the workshop that's coming up, since you talked about starting?
That's exactly what I was going to talk about. Kris and I share a brain, if you didn't know. We do. So I founded a company called Work for Change. I'm the president. Kris is the vice president of that company. And one of my favorite aspects of this business venture is that we offer a starting your own business workshop. It's a 2-part workshop. And what we really focus on is removing those challenges and barriers that have prevented you from starting your business or being successful in a business that you have started. And we do this through a 2-part series. You can go on our website. It is work4changellc.com. And you'll see a tab that says upcoming workshops. It has all the details there for you. And we're offering that in a couple of weeks. It's going to, and we really would like for you to participate in that. Again, if you are interested in starting your own business and just can't get it going, or if you've already started a business and it's just not taking off or doing what you think it should do, we're here to really help you. And you can go online and get the details of what that workshop will offer you. Other than that, we do want to encourage you, as always, to follow, like, and share, subscribe and share Work for Change on the different social media platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and of course, you found us here on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and please, again, subscribe so that we can work to make the world of work better.